This video shows you why Jimmy Butler's mind-boggling output has the NBA scared. With more playoff 40-point games in franchise history than LeBron, the Heat's current face of the franchise is improving his numbers from the regular season to the postseason better than any other star player. The advanced metrics prove that you could be watching highlights of the best player in the league. Throughout the first and second round, Jimmy ranks first among all players, just ahead of Luka Doncic and Ja Morant in 538.com's Raptor rating. He's just ahead of Al Horford and Chris Paul for the league lead in win shares per 48 minutes, also being first in box plus minus, just ahead of Jokic and Giannis. You're about to see how Jimmy's versatile yet overpowering offensive bag has cemented his superstar status, and does that make the Dade County legend in the making the best player in the game today? Make sure you stay tuned to find out. Before continuing, YouTube's analytics say that only 10.9% of you watching right now are subscribed, so if you haven't yet, please subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss a single upload. Also, please leave a thumbs up. It takes a few seconds and makes a massive difference in helping this video spread in YouTube's algorithm. Lastly, stay updated on the NBA on the channel by following me on Instagram and Twitter at DFlowHoops. Link is down below in the description for those two platforms. In Game 5, despite missing the greatest Raptor of all time in Kyle Lowry, Jimmy was a game-high plus 36, posting 23 points, 9 boards, and 6 dimes to fuel Miami to an absolute destruction of the process, blowing out the Sixers by 35 and holding Philly to a playoff low 85 points. Max Strus got loose for 19, also showing off his underrated presence on the glass by grabbing 10 rebounds, marking Max's first career playoff double-double. The sharpshooter is a plus 119 in this year's postseason, which is the best on the team. Sadly, if you're a Heat fan, Strus is going to be listed as questionable for Game 6, which if he were to end up missing, would put even more weight on JB's shoulders than there already is without K-Lau. A few nights before the most recent W in South Beach, Butler tallied a combined 73 points on 60% shooting from the field over 2 games back in Philadelphia, scoring at the most elite level we've ever seen from him, and that's saying a lot. At 32 years of age, Jimmy G's displaying to the world that he's in the prime of his basketball career, and that he could very well be the most well-rounded two-way player on planet Earth. Butler's arguably been the best player in these playoffs. His 28.3 points per game are third best. He ranks first in steals per night with 2.2. He's the only player averaging 25 points on 50+% shooting. In addition to the advanced stats I mentioned back in the intro of this video, Jimmy also ranks number 1 among all playoff performers in value over replacement, just ahead of Giannis and Ja. To significantly raise his numbers when the stakes have reached their highest like he has been, it's Jimmy's mix of bully ball and finesse, which perfectly suits playoff basketball. Blending forceful attacks with an unmatched touch from the mid-range, his intrinsic scoring ability and general offensive awareness to read double teams and trust his teammates for drop-off passes or kickouts can end your season in a heartbeat. Just ask Trae Young and the Atlanta Hawks, who succumbed to that in the first round. For today's film room, we'll look at how the 6-time All-Star in Jimmy has picked apart opposing game plans by specifically breaking down the 40 points on 20 field goal attempts he put up, albeit in a Game 4 loss. His teammates shot just a combined 20 for 82 from the field, forcing Butler to score around half of Miami's 108 total points. Utilizing an Adebayo on-ball screen, the poise and elusiveness to whip out a nifty in-and-out dribble, stop on a dime, and then up-fake gets Tobias Harris jumping out of the gym. Unfortunately, Butler misses the floater. Here, Kyle Lowry pushes it like hell in transition, and watch the speed and swift finish from Butler to execute a monster fast break. You can tell this man's healthy. Going downhill and bodying off his matchup into the lane, we see the same up fake we saw on Tobias, although Paul Reed doesn't take the bait. Despite that, Butler plants his left pivot, jab steps into the lane, twists around, up fakes yet again, and drains the contested Jordan-esque fadeaway in his matchup's grill. That's unguardable scoring poise right there. After a contested triple with his matchup heavily closing out on him, Jimmy G goes right back to another baseline fade, this time with Harden being the victim, and it's the space Butler creates with that high release that makes those leaning back jumpers easy money. Putting on a clinic, this time on the weak side, a jab step, physical take, and ridiculous spin to his offhand completely fools Danny Green, sending Jimmy to the charity stripe for the and one. But right here is the most unbelievable play from Butler, as this is exceptional defense from Joel Embiid, but Butler just sheds him by merely stopping on a dime and simply stepping through to the weak side and making a contested lay-in. An old man move to be sure, but an effective one nonetheless. But falling down going to his offhand, the difficulty of that attempt I think is underestimated. That displayed tremendous balance, footwork, and touch around the basket, all in one play. Scariest part about all of this is we've only discussed one side of the equation, as Butler's also made a living off being a defensive specialist, particularly on the perimeter. A separate video entirely could be made heavily breaking down Butler's defense. The Heat have outscored opponents by 102 points with Butler on the court this postseason, while teams have outscored the Heat by 5 points with Butler on the bench. The only players in NBA history who've averaged at least 28 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists while shooting 53% or better from the field during an entire playoff run are Jokic this season, Antetokounmpo also this year, LeBron in 2016-17 and 2017-18, along with Alex English back in 1983-84. Butler's on pace to join that list, which is pretty damn incredible. You can't forget Jimmy was the driving force behind Miami coming up just 2 wins short of a championship in the bubble. And people writing that run off, calling Butler and the Heat bubble guppies, kinda confused me personally, because as a Raptor fan, I knew what Butler did in the bubble was far from a fluke, because in 2019's playoffs, this was the guy who matched Kawhi Leonard in a back-and-forth 7-game battle for the ages when he was in Philadelphia, a series which came down to a buzzer-beating shot. Butler put fear into Toronto fans like myself before Kawhi's dagger, and he, along with JJ Redick, were massive pieces to that Sixer team. But skipping ahead to the current day, and here's what Jimmy's elite coach in Eric Spoelstra had to say about Jimmy's 2022 playoff output. Quote, "Jimmy's just a stable, high IQ guy. He's got a feel for what your team needs, and he does it on both ends. That's what's really kind of lost on young players coming into this league, of really what that looks like, being a two-way basketball player. Our whole team feels a great sense of confidence when the ball's in Jimmy's hands, and we leave the decision up to him. He's a very efficient offensive basketball player. He's a great competitor at its core, at his heart, and his soul. He's an ultimate competitor. When you get into competition, he understands the whole deal that you have to be able to do it on both ends. That's what he's been doing for us for 3 years, just really competing on both ends. But he's able to compete with a ferocity and do it with an incredible, stable mind that is really unique." End quote. Spo's experienced what it's like to be next to playoff Jimmy Butler in the past, but NBA champion and top wing defender in PJ Tucker is experiencing it for the first time, and here's what he had to say about Butler. "He's a dog. He plays hard, he's smart, he knows the game, but more than anything, he just plays really hard. That's the part I appreciate. He gives 120% every play. He never lets up. He fights to the end, and that's all you can ask for in this league." But in your opinion, what's Jimmy Butler's most impactful trait on or off the court? Best answer down below in the comments gets next video shout out. Top 5 commenters by June 21st receive free NBA merchandise this summer, so leave your take on today's question to compete in Community Speaks. Today's Speaks winner is Ona Ebodaga, who says, "This is already turning out to be a hell of a series. Brooklyn versus Boston was supposed to be this engaging and competitive, but that ultimately failed to materialize. It's very hard for me to bet against Milwaukee, even in the absence of Chris Middleton, just because of their championship DNA. I still think this goes 7 games, but I cannot count out the reigning finals MVP in making it to back-to-back conference finals." Appreciate every single answer. I hope you have a great one. D-Flow signing off.